hosting
Yeah.
guests or people, when you host or the host community, what way you spend all the way you stay away from home and the activities that goes on, relationship between tourism and hospitality.
Mhm. Okay.
Should I come again?
Yeah, the line was breaking up, so you can come again, please.
Okay, I was saying hospitality is hosting people, then the treatment you've given to them, that's the way you treat the guest for
Yeah.
them to relax. Yeah. And then tourism, I see tourism as they spending the time at the host community, the
Mhm.
activity they involve themselves in. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent.
So that's how I see hospitality and tourism. Yeah.
Okay. Any other views, please? Any other views of hospitality and tourism? Any other views? Okay, so can we, in summation, when we talk about hospitality, we're looking at welfare, isn't it? Because the fundamental idea of hospitality is supporting somebody to be able to be comfortable. And when we say that somebody, usually the reason why it's a twin discipline, hospitality and tourism, is because tourism is when somebody had actually made a movement from their traditional space of abode or from their conventional space of abode to somewhere that is not their original place of abode. Now, that individual's welfare is supposed to be taken care of, within that particular space that are not their natural space of abode. So when they make that movement, they're supposed to have a kind of service to help them feel comfortable. And so hospitality comes in. So we're saying that hospitality is just like the welfare system that is actually provided that particular individual who had made a movement onto that new place in order that they can actually feel very comfortable, until they leave that space. And so when you look at the idea of hospitality, it is no different from our way of life in where we originally live, because obviously when you are in your home, you will eat, you will sleep, you will shower, you will do almost everything that would make your life convenient and comfortable, isn't it? And the same way is applied when you move out of your home to your other place. And that's why most of the time you see hospitality organizations saying home away from home, isn't it? It means that
Yes.
when you have been, moved from one place to another, regardless of how far you've been, you should not experience any discomfort, or you should not experience any differentials in the way you live, originally. That's why we say home from home. You have to have, I mean, if there is a differential, it must even be much more better than where you actually coming from. All right. So the hospitality and tourism are actually twin disciplines that go hand in hand. Whereas the tourism requires a movement, hospitality grounds you or make sure that as you are here, we make sure that you feel comfortable, within that particular space. So as we're going to actually look at the significance of hospitality and tourism management in Ghana. Of course, we would have to actually understand what we call the environmental scanning. How do we, look at the environment, the factors within the environment, and how those factors actually impact on these, what do you call, two discipline areas, hospitality and tourism. And then, how does that actually, impact on that industry. We also will look at some of the limitations within the industry, etc. So we say that the interrelated, nature of hospitality and tourism. We say that hospitality and tourism industry is the largest and the fastest growing industry in the world. Clearly, we have seen what is happening now, COVID-19, isn't it? And if we didn't even have any idea the scale of the tourism and hospitality industry, at least COVID-19 puts that in a very clear picture. Isn't that the case? Because immediately the world came to a standstill, we knew what happened, isn't it? Now, the first thing that we saw was an immediate grounding of travel, all right? And when immediate grounding of travel happened, what next followed? Almost every hotel, almost every restaurant, almost every transportation, almost every, catering services were actually shut down. Do you get it? So we could immediately come to terms with the scale of that particular industry and the impact of that particular industry on the world economy. And that is what we're actually grappling with now as we speak. It's an exciting industry, and it's an exciting aspect. The exciting aspect is that the industry comprises so many different professions. Now, you probably may not have seen how far
but why are you taking that?
You probably may not have seen how far the industry actually touches each and every aspect of our lives. But as we said, once we actually had this covered, we probably have seen, the extent of that. Now, obviously, restaurants feel the biological need, to eat, as well as the need to socialize. It manages services, food services, etc., institutional client meetings, needs of guests, as well as, the clients. Now, it says that there was a study that actually talks about 57% of consumers now use the word internet in booking travel. All right. Again, when you look at the advent of, ICT has also come into the picture, because currently, as we speak, what we knew as a travel and tourism industry then was much more of what do you call, a brick and mortar systems. And I remember those days when I used to work with M&J Travel and Tours. People come to the offices to make bookings. No longer do people do so now, or even if they do, very, very little, minute of the population is actually doing that. Majority of people now are actually booking online and using new or modern technologies like mobile phones and the internet as means of, procuring, for example, bookings, travel bookings. So we have the increasing introduction of technology even within that particular space. All right. And then, of course, it says that restaurants use more than 30 different technological applications to provide, fastest or most convenient services, services to people. Many studies also show that the high-speed internet is one of the most important in-room amenities. So when it comes to room services, again, the use of, internet is becoming much more, pronounced. So we're just looking at the overview of the particular, industry of travel and hospitality and tourism, and how, many aspects of these, sectors are actually been impacted by technology, by advancements, these days, etc. All right. So again, we say that 24-hour day, the hospitality industry tends to work longer hours than most of other industries, which is, something that most of us know. Because obviously hospitality and tourism, as we said, is something to do with welfare. I mean, you don't go to sleep, until the client that you're actually taking care of has actually gone to bed, which means that on daily basis, within that industry, the people who work in the industry are actually working 24/7. All right. And as most of us know, the industry actually work on shift patterns, because as one actually finishes their work, someone else is supposed to actually take over to make sure that the client is actually, comfortable in the space. So we have increasingly 365 days clock that, the industry actually work, every day, that to make sure that the client is actually comfortable. And then of course, the what they call the graveyard shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. It is actually something that is unique to hospitality, workers. People are actually working day in and day out, running various shifts, So anyway, if you have any questions, you can ask me, and if you have any contributions, you can pinpoint it. But we're just looking at an introduction part of it so that we can abreast ourselves with, what we are talking about. Any questions or contributions?
Hello, Joa.
Yeah.
Interestingly, when I was choosing the course,
Yeah.
my focus was hospitality.
Yeah.
But I just realized when I started the class,
Mm.
for the class, let me say, that I had something to do with the tourism probably I hadn't even thought about.
You're right.
That as a port authority, we receive cruise vessels.
You're right.
Yes, and I was like, all this time I wasn't even thinking about them.
I was going to even ask you when Logos School is coming.
Yes, I had never even considered, but my focus was hospitality, so I was like, I thought it would come in Monday. Okay, fine.
Do you still
Then I
host?
just realized that because of the cruise vessels, we have maybe a cruise ship come to the ports, and they come with a whole team. Buses are organized. Yes, but my involvement is to make sure the place is okay for them to come. But I've never even thought that was actually being part of the tourism, industry.
That's a huge part of it. Visits to the ports.
Sure.
Do you still receive Logos too?
And that normally docks at the naval base.
The naval base.
Our port is too busy. We can't have that kind of arrangement.
Oh, okay. Because growing up, that's what we always look forward to Logos too.
Sure.
We have to go there and get some, some literature. We'll move through the ship, and sometimes they will do a little bit of cruising and bring us back.
Sure. Oh, okay. That's nice.
Yeah. And this is somewhere in 1989. Where were you?
Well, I think the last 5 years, I think they have been around. But the last time they came to Ghana, we couldn't host them at Jakande Port, so they had to go to the naval base.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's a huge part of your work. Okay.
Yeah, I just realized it.
Yeah, excellent. Any other point, please? Who else has discovered that there's another twist to their work? Obviously, for those of you within the accommodation space, you have both the hospitality and tourism, because you've got to let your guests know the various attractions and then the destinations as well. Okay. So again, the product within the industry is very much both tangible and intangible, all right? Because you've got to actually have the field, the services. Then, of course, if someone is actually coming to accommodation, for them to have a feel of, or to have any sense of expectation, they've got to see that the facility is in a very clean state, the facility is in a very habitable state, etc. So you're likely to have a better service or expectation if your tangible part of the service is or product is very on point, as well as the intangible aspect is very on point. So you've got to actually make sure that both, the tangible and intangible part are very much satisfactory. Of course, the hospitality and tourism industry sits well on what we call the perishability, because room service, for example, when it's not actually obtained or is not actually, the service is not secured, you definitely don't have the ability to store it, because remember, you're actually paying staff, whether they occupy or the occupancy rate is high or not, you definitely have to pay for your overheads. So you have to understand the perishability of the hospitality and tourism industry, in order that you can actually use it to manage the products and services, well. Okay, so I'll rush through this very quickly, and then we can actually get into the Ghanaian context. Now, when it comes to the industry philosophy, now, just like the service philosophy, most service philosophy, most industries have actually shifted from more of a managerial to more of a consumer, direction. Of course, it used to be that, managerially, the organization would take decisions, what they must do, and then implement. Now, over time, performance measurement has actually shifted to more of, the consumer-centric, perspective, where we're looking at, the management only serves as a giving counseling, giving directions, and making sure that whatever we are actually providing is coming from the consumer's perspective. What does the consumer want? How do they want it? From what perspective? And then we giving guidance to the staff in making sure that they provide these services to the best, what we call satisfaction of the consumer, is the new philosophy that we're actually working on. And as we said, because hospitality and tourism is more to do with welfare, total quality management is one key factor. If you're actually cooking, and as we know, I don't know how to cook, so please don't take me on that one. But as far as I know, when our parents are cooking, they continuously stir the soup or the stew, and they're testing it, isn't it? Continuously. They test it, till the time that they feel that the food is well cooked. So that's how total quality management is almost like, at every point in time, you are testing the quality measures. You're making sure that the quality frameworks are actually, followed. And in order that, by the end of the chain, that there is no, kind of differential in terms of the expectations, from the actuals. So TQM is one of the key factors that actually goes along with, hospitality and tourism. How do we make sure that at every point in time, we are measuring quality and making sure that it's meeting expectations, all right? So that has to be, part of your thinking. Also, the issue of sustainable hospitality. Now, if we look at the current, situation that we're in now, COVID-19, now that has actually put a lot more spotlight on the way we have actually managed our, hospitality and tourism industry. Now, if you look at it, we have over concentrated on source countries. For example, we're always looking at Germany, we're always looking at Europe, Britain, we're always looking at America, we're always looking at Asia, for example. Now, when COVID came and there was no travel from America or from Britain, from Germany, and these source countries have been badly hit, what do we see? We're in tatters as we speak because we haven't paid attention to domestic hospitality, domestic tourism. We haven't paid attention to building capacity. Our small businesses, we haven't paid attention to them. We are always looking at the big players, the big source countries, etc. Even within the sub-region, Ghana, Nigeria, Ghana, Togo, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, we even neglected that, always thinking about the big box countries. And when COVID came, we are almost in tatters. So that tells you that the idea of sustainability has to be domestically driven. How do we build a homegrown market so that when America is hit, we still can function? So that when Britain is hit, we still can function. So that when Germany is hit, we still can function. And if you're a small business, how do you make sure that even when these source countries are no longer coming, you still can make money from your community-based, small hospitality and tourism activities that are going on? We have to actually start thinking about that. And we have to also look at how do we build or empower the capacity of the local people so that we can employ these people and we give them training so that they are employable. And when they are employable and they live in the community and they're actually making livelihood, they will be able to support us even in times when there are no businesses, so that they can say that, yes, I'm prepared to, let's say, take a cut in salary or a cut in wages. We need to start thinking about that. Sustainability within that particular space is very, very crucial. Again, when it comes to sustainability, we're looking at how do we use renewable energy, or how do we use local, implements, like local materials, in order that we could actually make sure that we are spending low in terms of overheads, and we're making sure that our businesses are continuous and sustainable. We've got to actually start thinking about that in order that we can actually sustain the generations, going forward. Any questions or contribution? Any questions or contribution? Yes? Yes? Okay. So going forward, we're looking at the guest loyalty is key. So how do we actually secure loyalty of the guest? All right, in terms of whoever is the guest that we actually supported, it's only one key thing: service. Quality service is what would actually secure the loyalty of a guest. Quality service in terms of our responsiveness, quality service in terms of our first time resolution. In some places, the phone would ring 10 times before you hear hello from the other side. But is that a good practice? So we've got to make sure that we have actually factored in quality, and as we said, total quality service in all aspects of the systems so that we can actually secure the loyalty of our guests. And as we say, the moment of truth is always, with us. If the guest does not actually encounter continuous service quality, then of course, we're not going to actually, secure that. So these are some of the few points that we can actually raise. Now, we would move on to the context, looking at the various, the context within Ghana when it comes to hospitality and tourism, for example. All right. Now, we say that whenever we talk about hospitality and tourism, we're looking at it from two perspectives, demand and supply. So you may be from a demand perspective or you may be from a supply perspective. And when we talk about from demand perspective, we're looking at the source countries that are actually bringing in the guests or bringing in the tourists, for example. And then the supply side, which most of us are actually from the supply side, we're providing services, in one way or the other to these people who are coming in. Again, when we talk about hospitality and tourism, we're looking at the economic impact that we can actually measure in terms of investment, in terms of employment, in terms of balance of payment. So the kind of investment that people make, for example, the hotels that people build, for example, the amusement centers that people build, for example, the cinemas, the theaters, the the restaurants that people build, etc., the theme parks that people build. We're looking at investment from that perspective. And then, of course, from those investments, there are employment, isn't it? So we tend to employ people, waiters, we employ, room service providers, we employ, frontline or front desk staff, etc. We're looking at that, as another economic impact, that we have. We're looking at balance of payment. Obviously, when these source countries are coming in, they're coming in with foreign exchange. And then we as a country, they use that to actually build our reserves, as it were, so that the country can actually have a much more stable, economic situation. So we look at it from these perspectives. And of course, we look at it from the environmental and cultural impact as well. Now, majority of times, if you look at our socioeconomic, milieu, when we come into contact with people, we learn from each other. Now, currently, as we speak, there are quite a lot of, Nigerian language that have actually seeped into our language, isn't it? People now use Tofiakwa and things like that, as a result of our relationship, with Nigeria, either through, cinema or through even direct relationship. And they also use Charlie, etc. So you're looking at these cultural impact, we're looking at the environmental impact. But then sometimes the environmental impact can also be negative because we have seen elsewhere where sex tourism, for example, had a lot more negative impact on the environment. And some countries do not even want to talk about it because it is something that has two ways. That it gives them economic success, but also give them health, negative health impact, for example. So we have to actually appreciate both sides of the conversation and know how do we manage these impacts. Elsewhere where they have a very huge, beach, attractions or beach, tourism, etc., you see that there have been a lot of impact environmentally on the sea quality and the quality of ecological, what we call ecological quality, on the sea lines, the shores, etc. So these are some of the impacts that we can also, address when it comes to hospitality and tourism. Any questions or contributions? Please, you have to talk because I'm not the only person in this room. Any questions or contributions? Yeah? Yeah? Any questions or contributions, please? Yeah? Who is talking? I am listening. we are looking at introduction. You can say something from your end. Okay, so figure 1, as we see here, is the 5 main sectors in the industry, hospitality and tourism industry. If you look at it, the hospitality sector, we have hotels, motels, guest houses, bed and breakfast, farmhouses. In fact, do we have some farmhouses in Ghana? Yeah. This place in Cape Coast, is that a farmhouse? Hans Cottage. Do we have farmhouses in Ghana?
So what I can't hear you clearly. You said what house? Farmhouse.
Yeah, farmhouse.
Oh yeah, we do.
We do have farmhouses. Okay. Where do we have some of them? Farmhouses, apartments, villas, flats, cottages, yeah, condominiums, vacation villages, holiday centers, conference exhibitions, marinas, restaurants, inns, cafes. Yeah, that is within the hospitality sector. So you can imagine that some of these areas, if there are no such spaces, perhaps you can actually look at exploring some of these areas, within the tourism space or the hospitality space. Attractions and events, theme parks, at least we know of the Legon Botanical Gardens. Yeah, it's a theme park. And I'm sure Kakum is a theme park. Can you describe Kakum as a theme park? Do we have a Kakum as a theme park? Or what about the one in Kumasi? What's the name? What's the name of the one in Kumasi?
Ratri.
Yeah, the Ratri. Ratri Park. Is it a theme park?
Well,
I see Kakum as a national park.
A national park, yeah, than a theme park, right? Because it doesn't really have any what do you call, sort of artificial theme activities. But yeah, okay. But what about the Legon Botanical Garden? Or
it is.
It's a theme park, right?
Yes, it can be classified as.
Okay, but we still have a long way to go in developing theme parks. I think there's a one that is being developed by the Aqua Safari Group. They call it, is it Anansi something? They haven't completed it, but I think that one.
It's Safari Valley.
Yeah, the Safari Valley, yes. I think that will be our foremost proper theme park when it's completed. And of course, we have wildlife gardens, we have heritage sites, we have transport sector, airlines, shipping lines, railway, of course, the bus, coaches, car rentals. For example, currently we have Hayes and Hertz and which one? I've forgotten the other company. And then of course we have Ubers, and all those ones joining in now. Then we have the travel organizers and intermediaries, travel intermediaries, we have tour operators, we have the tour wholesalers, brokers, retail travel agents, conference organizers. Do we have conference organizers in Ghana?
Not that I know of. They classified under tour operators.
Tour operators. Again, yes. These are some of the opportunities that we probably want to start exploring.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because the conference organizers is becoming one of the biggest in the area under the MICE sector. And then of course we have destination organization sectors, which is the National Tourist Offices, of course, like the GTA. the destination marketing organizations like the Abeku Santana's, Kaya Tours, for example. And then we have regional state tourist offices, local tourist offices, and then tourist associations like the Ghana Federation of tourists, etc. All those ones. So yeah, I mean, if you look at the industry, it's a very huge sector, and almost, I mean, if you look at it, it's a very huge, industry, and almost every aspect of our lives, you could see how the hospitality and tourism actually affect. All right, and if you have to identify opportunities, and then look at where there haven't been that much of the players or that crowd, and you want to look at a place to actually pitch yourself in terms of opportunities, these are some of the framework that you could use. Sorry. That you could use to actually identify opportunity. Now, when we look at the categories of visitors in terms of tourism, as we said, we have those inbound, and then we have the outbound. Of course, we have the domestic ones as well. So whenever you hear the word inbound, we're talking about international arrivals. All right. So when you hear the word inbound within the hospitality and tourism industry, we're looking at, international tourists. When you hear the word outbound, again, it's about international tourists, but those of us going. And then, of course, domestic, as in residential, tourist is what we call the domestic. Now, when we refer to visitors, visitors are referred to as all travelers, and then tourists are those who stay overnight, and then the same day visitors arrive and depart on the same day. So again, some of the terminologies that we use is that visitors are, bless you, all visitors are referred to as travelers. And then of course, tourists are those who overstay, overnight. Okay. So visitors who travel and stay in countries other than their own places of residence, they spend more money in terms of international tourists, they stay longer, and they use more expensive transport and accommodation. They contribute to foreign exchange. And I suppose that's the reason why majority of times we're actually focusing more on international arrivals as opposed to the domestic ones. But we are actually talking about sustainability, as we highlighted earlier. Post-COVID, how do we ensure that we can actually sustain the industry by making sure that we can build internal capacity? Is one of the things that we must actually start looking at, as opposed to, always following what we call the international arrival. All right, so visitors who travel and stay overnight within the boundaries of their own country, overnight stayers, day visitors, we have that. Important point is that there is nothing that restricts the total market to overnight stays. All right, in the travel for leisure or pleasure only, all tourism includes elements of travel. So what we should know is that whenever we talk about tourism, all tourism includes elements of travel, but not all travel is tourism. Why? Because there are travel that are economic, travelers. For example, people who travel to go and work elsewhere. When you travel to go and work elsewhere and you earn money from where you are, you're not considered as a tourist, because a tourist is rather supposed to put in money into the economy where you are. You're not supposed to rather take money from that economy where you are. So not all travel, is tourism, but every tourism involves what? Travel. And all travel and tourism is temporary, as we know. Maximum a year, all travel and tourism is temporary. All right. So the figure here also expands on the earlier, one that we looked at. If you look at the marketing influences, you have the travel organizations, destination organizations, and then you have the demand market, as we saw, and the supply market, and then of course the transportation sector, connecting both the demand and then the supply market, together. So the framework actually tells you that the destination organizations actually promotes, the supply organization, the supply side, attractions and activities, and they bring together the demand side, the visitors, the tourists, same-day visitors, etc., through the use of transportation. That is the air, road, sea, and rail, come together, which means that marketing must be one central point of your activities when it comes to hospitality and tourism. You couldn't actually do away with, marketing to make sure that you could actually bring these two angles together. All right. Now, from the Ghana tourism overview, the industry has been growing, and as we keep saying, has become the fourth largest, income earner for the government. Since the establishment of a dedicated Ministry of Tourism and Culture, there has been a focus on selling the country as what? As a soap powder. I mean, it has become a cliche that tourism now is no longer a leisure activity, or hospitality no longer a leisure activity. We didn't used to actually pay attention to the hospitality and tourism industry in the past because we thought the places that needed attention were the so-called, economic aspects of what they call the country. But over time, we've come to realize, or countries have come to realize, that hospitality and tourism is a very big sector that needs attention. And since then, we started creating a whole ministry for that. And then, of course, we started creating a long-term, strategic plan, which UNDP and then UNDP in those days actually helped the country to start, thinking that way. We first had a 15-year tourism development plan, which now we have actually progressed. So the current one is from 2013 to I think 2027, which is what is in, or 23 years, which is what is in place now. I think I shared it on the platform the other time. All right. So according to Ghana Tourism Authority, tourism comprises the activities, by persons traveling to and staying in places outside, their usual environment for a period not more than one consecutive year, for leisure, for business, and other purposes not related to the exercise of an activity remunerated from within that place that they visit, which we have already said that. Once you are getting money or remuneration from the place that you have been, you're not a tourist. But if you have gone there and you're rather spending money, maximum for 1 year, you are a tourist. And therefore, hospitality and tourism actually applies to you. Any questions or contributions? Again, these are world figures. I think, we can actually look at it broadly. As I said, target markets that we can use to UK, Germany, US, the Netherlands, and Nigeria. Of course, we're now looking at Asia, right? We're now looking at even some of the other Latin American countries, for example. And we have now come to appreciate the idea that we have to build sub-regional markets. So how do we look at, you know, Kenya, Uganda, you know, what do you call Rwanda, and all those, you know, other sub-regional markets? It's crucial for us to have that conversation. Now, as we said earlier, hotels and catering, transportation, adventure tourism, beach tourism, cultural tourism, ecotourism, heritage tourism, pilgrimage, wildlife, medical tourism, MICE, which is meetings, incentives, conferences, exhibitions. These are all, you know, areas or sectors within the industry that we could actually look at, you know, when we're thinking about opportunities. Okay. So the things that the country actually gets income from, as we said, it's an income generation sector. We're looking at the taxes that people pay as in income taxes, value-added taxes. We're looking at the insurance, health insurance that people, you know, operators pay. We're looking at the licenses, the fees, property rates that people pay, airport services, etc. All these are the very many ways that a country tends to get money out of the industry. The industry is structured in this sense. We have the Ministry of Tourism, that is the policy implementing agency at the top, followed by the Ghana Tourism Agency, that is a policy making body ministry, followed by the Ghana Tourism Authority, which is the implementation agency, and then of course the GATOF, which is the members of the federation, actually serve as an umbrella. So if you own a business, you probably would want to be part of GATOF, because that's the umbrella of the, you know, what do you call, the tourism and hospitality players. Now, if you're looking at the partners in the area in terms of stakeholder engagement, then you would also want to look at the structure and know that when it comes to identifying the stakeholders, of course, at the top is the policy making, you know, body, and then the GTA and its other, you know, affiliates institutions. So that's how the structure look at. Now, in terms of development, the industry has expanded as a result of a number of, you know, development. Key is the aviation industry. Of course, the local aviation industry had come to widen or broaden our scope in terms of hospitality and tourism. Today, I can decide to fly to Takoradi and then fly from Takoradi to Kumasi within a space of 5 hours, exploring these two places. In the past, we couldn't do that. You probably have to travel 4 hours from Accra to Takoradi, and then about 7 hours from Takoradi to Kumasi. By the time you're done, your holidays are over. And that actually restricted the industry quite a lot. Now, since the local aviation industry, we have managed to actually do, you know, cross country in a very short period, or we've managed to actually operate intra the country and transcontinental airlines to boost the industry. Now, we also have entry of international hotels and food chains. Of course, the entry of, when you look at it, KFC actually gives a lot more tourists, you know, some kind of confidence in our system. The reason being that there is nothing that is so frustrating that when you have been, or when you have decided to go to a country and then the food is not actually comfortable with your stomach. Certainly you're not going to enjoy your trip, isn't it? So the idea of international food chains going into countries like ours, or coming into countries like ours, actually gives a lot more, you know, assurances to international travelers about, the countries that they must visit, and they usually actually, bring in quite a lot more, travelers along, and that's why some of these, businesses would ask for tax rebate, etc., because of the contribution they make to your industry. Of course, they bring competition as well, because then the local players would have to actually compete with such, food chains. So currently, as we speak, I'm sure since the introduction of KFC, Papaya had been in trouble, and I'm very sure about that, isn't it? Papaya perhaps had faced a lot of competition because of KFC. And if we were in the production of local foods or local drinks, I'm sure that, KFC and Burger King perhaps had taken a little bit of your market. But it is also true that they also bring in, what we call the international arrivals. Now, we know that currently there are other international hotels coming into the system. The one at the airport, what's the name? The new one?
Marriott.
Marriott, yeah. So unfortunately for Marriott, immediately they started operating, profit came. So they had to shut down. But of course, all these actually contribute to the expansion of the hospitality and tourism industry, although it gives us a lot of competition. So although it gives the local, what do you call, industry competition, they also bring business, because not everybody would end up getting a space at Marriott. By the time you get there, maybe the room service that you're actually looking for is already, occupied, or there's no space for that. So you must actually find other places, to look out for. So yeah, ICT also another development. These days you have Opodo, Expedia, lastminute.com. These are online, facilities that people use to make bookings, and I'm sure, Kwame, I'm sure people have been booking. I don't know whether you make use of these services.
Expedia. Expedia is very. I've not heard of Opodo. I've not heard of Last Minute. I heard of Expedia, Wakana.
Wakana, yeah, Wakana is more West Africa, isn't it?
Yeah. And then Booking.com.
Booking.com, yeah. Last minute is popularly used, especially in the UK, for example, because majority of times you get very cheap, kind of deals on there as well. Then of course, there are other ones like which people use, but in all this, how do we build? As we talked about the sustainability, how do we build local versions actually? Wakana is Nigerian, of course, it's West African. It's a very good one. But again, how do we build local, portals like that could actually help, get people local rooms, that are cheaper, and people can actually, of course, the introduction of what do you call? What's the name? The accommodation, the new accommodation Uber. What's the name?
Is it Bolt?
No.
Airbnb.
Bolt?
Airbnb.
Airbnb. Yeah.
Airbnb. Again, but that's an international brand, isn't it? So
yes.
Yeah. So how do we build local ones is another, a good thing that we must actually think about it. Of course, the emerging oil industry with major, multinationals is another factor that has actually come to contribute to our industry. Because whilst the experts come in, the oil experts, etc., they bring their families. So not only did they come for businesses, but as they bring their families get exposed to the other sectors, the hospitality and tourism sector of the economy, and that actually expands it. And then sometimes when they had actually come to do their business, they end up, taking the other aspects, as well. So yeah, Kwame, you want to say something?
Yes, quickly I want to just to share an experience. Talking about sustainability when it comes to ICT.
Yeah.
With my experience, I realized that most of the hotels are not going for all these. For instance, Expedia, especially the very small ones, like me and the small hotels in East Lagos. What it is that, for instance, Expedia and Airbnb, when people sign on to it, the hotel or whatever gets money at the end of the month. It takes a long time. You know, it's not sustainable because we are looking at the short term. When someone books, for instance, today, the 10th of June, 2020, and the hotel and the person checks in, stays in for instance, two or three nights, the person makes the payment to the organization, to Airbnb. It takes a month for that person, a month and 10 days for the person to receive the money. Now, if you're a small organization, I mean, and you have to get this money at the end of the month, the processes involved, that's the first thing. And you have to keep operating. And as part of operation, if you are to rely, for instance, on this Airbnb or online booking without getting walk-ins, you are not sustainable. And so it's not encouraging hotel operators to use some of these services.
Okay, that's a very good point. So again, so as we talk about, sustainability, and we know that per international best practice, this is what, the industry is using, because remember, we have to align with the global practices, and these facilities or these portals are global, in that sense. Yet we have our own local challenges. As you said, small businesses need these monies to, keep operation, to keep sustaining their daily operations. Now, the challenge here is that if we had some kind of, if we had some kind of parity, just like the other, global players do, or the other, players do, because elsewhere they could actually operate on credit. All right, these hotels may have cheap money. They could use those cheap money because they have credit facilities with banks, etc., and they don't mind actually having their monies locked up with these, portals. And then, once, within a month or two, yes, it's okay with them. But in our case, you do not have access to capital. So your daily operations relies on how much the arrival or the visitor is actually paying. And these are some of the challenges that we do have. All right. And that's why it's probably the idea that we must build local capacity. So imagine that we have local, lastminute.com that actually, facilitates, bookings, bring in people, to book with you. And then, of course, because they are in Ghana, they could actually turn around quickly within a day or two, give you your money, you're in operation, and they, hold on to whatever the cut that they have to. Certainly that would actually facilitate, the industry. So that's what we're talking about. How do we actually ensure that we're actually playing the game globally, but making sure that we're sustaining, locally as well, in order that it doesn't actually affect, our operations, is the question. And that actually, goes with policy positions as well. Now, can we actually get the Ghana Tourism Authority and the ministry to find a way that they can facilitate these international portals to perhaps fast track the return of the money that they are supposed to hold to the local businesses in order that they can actually, be in business. Currently, we do not have PayPal, and so it is even difficult for people to think of using their credit cards online,
Yeah.
So even where you set up, payment systems onto your website, the traveler, the foreign traveler, or the visitor coming in from Europe or America is not comfortable using their credit card on your website, but they are comfortable using their card on lastminute.com or Opodo's website because they can trust the securities arrangement, all right? Because Opodo will use PayPal, Expedia will use PayPal, lastminute.com will use PayPal, all right? And that makes it much more comfortable for them because if something goes wrong with their card, they can hold these institutions responsible and they are aware they will get their monies back, all right? In our case, it's not a case, all right? So how do we, from policy perspective, get, the authorities or the regulators to sanitize the system in order that we could actually invest confidence in the traveler or in the visitor to use the kind of systems or the facilities that we have is one of the key questions that we have to address ourselves as an industry. All right. All right. Any other point? Thank you for that. I mean, any other point? All right. Okay. So, changing prospects for 21st century, key economic and social trends have transformed, severe economic decline, loss of employment, traditional community disintegration, a new form of remarkable growth. Obviously, we don't even have to. Okay, Jemima. Yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to ask the business model Airbnb uses. How is it so different from the ones normal traditional hotels and guest houses use?
Okay, so the Airbnb is using the current business model that almost every new so-called 21st century business is trying to use, which is shareability, all right? The sharing economy. In fact, the sharing economy, it looks like it's a new idea, but you could actually almost say that it emanates from Africa because we have been sharing radio since God knows how long. We've been sharing newspapers, all right? In fact, we even share, what do you call, a house, isn't it? In the common sense of compound houses, isn't it? So the Airbnb idea is that, yes, you may not necessarily have to live in a particular room 24/7, 365 days in a year. Why don't you give it up for somebody else to come and occupy it? And not only one person, but you could have 2 or 3 people at one point if they can find accommodation, i.e., if they can find common relations between them, they can live in a place and then share, the space, just like we used to do or we do with our taxis, etc. All right. So it's a common, what do you call, practice that we have been doing all this while, which some people have decided to modernize it, only using what ICT as the way of, making that happen. So it is nothing new from our usual, what do you call, methodology. Are you with me?
Yes, sir. But I wanted to find out. I'm struggling to see how the current legal regime can regulate such an arrangement.
The the okay. Hey, Kwame, do you want to say something?
Well, I think that regulation should be able to play a big role. Unfortunately, our regulation system is still being at a very tender age. Look at what the tourism authority that should regulate these systems is doing. I mean, we are faced with COVID. I keep asking the tourism authority what it has for hotel operators or tour operators, and they are not coming out with anything. So when you talk about legal regime, it will be difficult because the regulators themselves are not firm. So coming out with regulations that will trigger certain legal regimes will be difficult for now. That's what I think.
It depends on which side of the regulation are we looking at. For example, are we looking at the regulation in terms of the occupants, or we're looking at from the supply side regulation, or we're looking at, so Jemima, perhaps you want to be a little bit clearer on where you're.
I'll say the two, but I think in asking that question, it was more of the supply.
The supply side. So
yes, but I think the two definitely will need some sort of regulation, because I feel that the form in which you just explained, if that is anything to go by, it is almost presenting itself like a normal, I have a place, I want to rent out, I'm a landlord-tenant kind of relationship. But it's just that it is for a shorter duration, or in terms of so that's why I'm struggling to find, because I think I once downloaded the app in Accra, and you could see that there are many of such facilities in Accra, and I was just wondering that, wow, why would I pay for such a facility, and the law doesn't protect me if I go there.
Yeah, but you see, the legal positions on residencies are clear. All right. Okay. A house for a residence or for residency, like you live in your house as a resident, it's completely clear from a trading, a house meant for trading, i.e. meant for a short-term accommodation purposes. Now, that is clear. The only difficulty is that whether people have actually registered legally.
Okay.
They registered it as such. And that is where the challenge is, isn't it? And I'm sure Kwame, understands what I'm talking about. So the law actually says that even just like if you have, your room and you're using it for bed and breakfast, all right? Now, that's completely different from, a room that you're using, that you're living in, and then maybe a friend comes to visit you, or people, when they come from Kumasi, they come and visit you. It's completely different, because they come and visit and then they go, that's your house, all right? There's no, what they call commercial transaction. Immediately there's a commercial transaction, the law expects you to pay taxes on whatever revenue you are actually acquiring. And that means that it's supposed to be registered under a different heading other than residency. Do you get it? And whether people are actually doing that, registration or not, is a completely different story altogether. Do you get it? So that's the issue that we probably should have. But I'm sure that the law is completely clear, as to how, a particular property is supposed to be demarcated, either as a residency or as a short-term, what do you call, accommodation for hotel purposes, etc. All right. Yeah. Kwame wanted to say something.
Doc, please, I think I was struggling to hear the last part of what you said. The mic wasn't too good.
Okay. Yeah, so I was actually talking about whether people are actually doing the right thing,
Okay.
That's
So is it possible that the locations I saw registered under Airbnb probably is not legal?
Yeah, a lot of people are not actually legally registering it.
Absolutely. I mean, sir, I always say that it looks like the regulator still has problems. For instance, a lot of people have used their homes as accommodation places for commercial service, and they are registered onto these Airbnb, but they are not legally registered with the regulator. Now, yeah. It's the regulator will not be able to give us very good data with regards to these I mean, homes or whatever we call it. So it's very difficult for us to even monitor to see whether the right thing is being done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're right.
So, for instance, when you have legal issues, how do you go about it? Because I mean, you are not registered with any agency or any regulator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it becomes very difficult.
Exactly, and that's where the revenue seeping also comes in, because they haven't registered officially. The regulator itself is not able to follow through, to take their money, and so they will end up bringing all the overheads to those of you who are legally registered to pay almost all the,
Sure.
Yeah. They use you for their targets.
Yeah, that's the point. So the very few people that are registered are the ones who are supposed to carry the burden, instead of, all these people get those monies and then they get straight into their pockets, without paying, a penny on them. All right. Okay. So the obviously we've looked at some of the advances, some of the things that are actually ongoing, making sure that the industries are actually expanded. But we have to look, beyond that. We're now looking at knowledge economy. We're now looking at, advancements in technologies, the things that perhaps, would perhaps, kind of expand the market the more. And COVID, to some extent has thrown us into that perspective. All right. Currently, as we speak, we're looking at a lot more changes that is coming into the market. Currently, as we speak, what are some of the arrangements that you can tell from your own, outfit? You're talking about sanitizers. It's become a common feature, isn't it? Surely, I'm sure that one of the things that you may have to start considering buying is, face masks, to be part of your storeroom activities, so that when visitors come in, they could perhaps have face masks as one of the complementary, what do you call services, isn't it? So somebody is going to airport and they don't have a face mask. Perhaps if you're a hotelier, you probably would want to have them, one maybe with your branding on it, as a way of, complementing with the service that they have. Now, surely the idea of sanitizers, giving out sanitizers, is becoming one common thing that organizations are actually giving out. So you realize that there are happenings in the system that possibly would either, make us much more resilient, and then increase our capacity and our opportunity, or could hurt us, depending on how prepared we are, in responding to some of these challenges. Now, one of the conversations that we're having, during the lockdown period, we were just saying that definitely when you take the plane, you are going to find, alongside your headphones, face masks. All right. And clearly we've started. Now, even Emirates has actually told you that, checking your blood samples is one of the prerequisites. Within 10 minutes, your COVID test is here. Guns or temperature guns is becoming common. And I'm sure for hotels and then from other hospitality joints like yours, again, these are some of the things that are becoming common. So we always have to be tracking the system and then see what are some of the things that perhaps, is adding more, to our plate and making sure that we either, benefiting or it would hurt us so that we'll be prepared, adequately for that. Anyway, so significance of a market environment, and that's what we're talking about, the socioeconomic, the political environment, the technological environment scanning. We have to be scanning them almost every day and look at its impact, on our services and our abilities to function well. All right. So as we know, you have the economic, you have the natural, you have the technological, political, legal systems, socio-cultural systems. And the political legal systems, especially the legal systems, now that, COVID is here with us, we have to be very mindful of possible legal suits. Somebody is not going to protect themselves well, and they leave their hotels, go to their, wherever they're coming from, maybe get some attacks, and they're going to say that they actually contracted that from your hotel. You want to be mindful of that. So you want to put in measures to remind people of their safety protocols and, the way that they have to take care of themselves so that they don't actually end up, calling you out as being responsible for their shortcomings, etc. So we've got to be very, very particular about informing, arrivals or tourists about their health responsibilities, etc. All right. I think we've had a lot, as an introduction. So we would actually end here and then continue. I think it's tomorrow, right? The next class is tomorrow. We can look at the consumer behavior of the tourist and how, that impact on our strategy, etc. All right. Any questions or contributions before we close?
So a quick one.
Yeah.
Is a question.
Yeah.
Can we show hospitality without cooking food or anything?
Yeah. Who can answer that question for us? Hospitality without food. Yeah. Who can answer that?
Oh yeah.
Jemima, your line is on mute.
Oh, sorry. Sir, I am saying that I won't try to answer. What I'm saying is not an answer, but it's something I've thought about because I've heard even within my space.
Yeah.
I see that staff who work at the clubhouse they suffer because of the food and drinks. And I even once heard a big hotel in Takoradi that the owner wishes to outsource the food and beverages part of the business and just focus on the rooms.
Yeah.
So I'm like, ooh, this thing, is it that it's too difficult?
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Bless. Your hand is up.
I don't know if I really got the question well, but I thought he asked, did he say that can you have hospitality without food? Is that what he said?
Yeah, that's what he asked.
Okay. Yes, sweetie. I think the little I know hospitality is the warm or friendly whatever.
Yeah. Go on.
Warm or friendly, probably reception given to somebody. I mean, from the time the person enters the hotel.
Yeah.
You understand? Even when the person had not been to the restaurant,
Yeah.
the front desk,
yeah.
from the security, even from the security,
Yeah.
saying hello, showing you where to park,
yeah.
Showing you the door.
Yeah.
Yes, I think all that is hospitality. I don't know if I'm right, Doug.
Yeah. Okay, good point. Who else want to add that? Who else want to add that? Yeah, I think you're not wrong. Obviously, when you look at the description of hospitality, even when you take hospitals, for example, and the caring of patients, all right, it's part of the hospitality industry. And just like you're saying, caring of patients doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be given food, all right. We have outpatients departments where people not necessarily stay in, but they actually discharged, every now and then. So it depends on the definition or the operational definition of that particular institution. For example, if you go to a bed and breakfast, all right, and then you actually pay for, and you said that, oh, you're not interested in breakfast, so the breakfast part is eliminated. It doesn't mean that the hotel should not offer you that hospitality that you need. Hospitality means that it should include comfortable bedding, all right? It should include a very decent spaces, a very, accommodating space that when you sleep, you would realize that you have slept soundly, all right? That there are no bed bugs, etc. So I don't think that hospitality actually would mean complete if there is food. Do you get it? Because then, of course, those of us who sometimes when we are short of money, we say, okay, would you breakfast in the food? Yeah. Sometimes I remember I went to Pando. I went to Pando. It's a fantastic place, and then the place is so beautiful. I wanted to spend more time there. But then spending more time there means that if I have to pay for the full complement of it, it means that, I can only spend maybe a day or two. But I wanted to spend more time. So I said, okay, Charlie, you just so share condition of Nama me found. Yeah, so they turned air condition, they gave me fan. But I realized I didn't even need air condition, all right? Because the fan was fantastic. In fact, I love the place. It was 60 Ghana a night. I mean, wonder. Do you get it? So sometimes you can ask them to turn the air condition off or free breakfast.
Really? Really?
Dog, if not for you, I didn't know you could make such deals.
Oh yeah. I mean, there are a lot of facilities that are very good at making sure that they can actually segment the service for you, and that's something that we have to learn. In one of the most successful business modules was by Stelius, EasyJet, all right?
Sure.
And Ryan's boss, Oneri. Now, when they came with the theory of no frills, all right, people thought they were joking. They said, look, if you want to stand in the plane to Alicante, and if you are prepared to stand in a plane to Alicante, you can pay as small as £2, and we'll carry you to Alicante. And it was true. They started operating it. People can actually pay £5. You can pay £5 from England to France, so long as you are prepared to carry your bag, on your head. So long as you don't have any bag at all. So I think that the idea of no frills, all right, has to be, has to catch on with us. I mean, can I actually strip off the entire service with other parts of the service? so that I can actually pay what I have. Why not possible? Do you get it? So I can say that, okay, Charlie, strip off the breakfast for me, strip off the air conditioning. In fact, if the bed sheet, you have to be changing it every morning, and it costs me, let's say extra 50 Ghana. Let me just have a bed sheet. Do you get it? And still the service must be top. Do you get that? And that shouldn't actually take the hospitality off. It should still match the hospitality all the same. Do you get it? I don't think the food itself, whether it's part or not part, would make a hospitality. It is about how do you let the arrival or the tourist feel welcoming, just like Bless was actually saying. No matter what the service is, are you speaking right? Are you offering a very cheerful hat? Are you offering a very cheerful service? Do they feel happy that they are there at your, at your service? Once you give all those things, I think you're fantastically right. All right. Okay, guys. Thank you so much. I hope it's been one good session. It's been a long one, but hopefully we'll keep being interactive and then we can enjoy that. All right.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sir, please, can I ring you?
Thank you.
Oh, of course you can. Now I'm okay. Small. I'm picking up small. You can always. Sure a lot of you have been calling me and then you've not been having a very good response because I was not, doing very well.
But Doc, on a lighter note,
yeah.
You know the first place I saw your picture?
No.
It was a news item saying you were calling out EcoBank.
Oh yeah.
Ah, that's about 2 or 3 weeks ago. About 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
On Facebook.
Yeah, on Facebook.
Yes, I was like, this must be him. Anyway.
So it's even better you saw that one, not the one that the police slapped me.
Okay.
I'm quite naughty a little bit. So sometimes I'm, giving them hit. No, exactly. You see, Sejuan, I was in Ho when I had that problem with EcoBank.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was in Ho. I came to Ho, and EcoBank one night I was just sleeping. I got up in the morning. About 4,000 Ghana cedis has been taken out of my account.
Oh.
Yeah, and
this is about 2 iPhones, though.
Can you imagine? where the people, the people who took out the money from my account far away in America.
Wow.
Yeah, far away in America.